To the world, he is the Wolverine, an unstoppable force of nature. Hidden within the redacted files of Weapon X is a haunting roadmap of a psyche that has been intentionally dismantled. Join us as we strip away the superhero myth to uncover the terrifying reality of Logan's regression into a soulless asset. Before he was known as Wolverine, before the legend, before the team affiliations and the long road toward redemption, there was simply a subject, a specimen, a file number. What they had in their custody was not treated as a person with a past, but as a foundation for something they intended to rebuild from the ground up. In their eyes, Logan was not a hero waiting to emerge. He was patient zero in a controlled experiment designed to test the limits of human and mutant endurance under extreme psychological and physical stress. From the very beginning, the objective was clear: strip away identity, fracture memory, and reassemble the subject into something obedient, something weaponized. But there was a problem, one that complicated every stage of the process: Logan's healing factor. Unlike any ordinary human subject, Logan could not be broken in conventional ways. Physical trauma, no matter how severe, would not hold. Bones shattered, flesh torn, organs damaged. His body would repair itself, often within moments. To the scientists overseeing the project, this was both a gift and an obstacle. It meant they could push him further than any other subject without killing him. But it also meant that pain alone would never be enough to fully control him. Because while the body could be rebuilt, the mind proved far more resilient than anticipated. The goal then evolved. If they could not destroy him physically, they would dismantle him psychologically. Repetition, sensory overload, deprivation, memory interference. Every method was applied with clinical precision. The healing factor kept him alive, but it also forced the program to escalate its methods. Logan could endure more than any man should, and so they made sure he did. This is where the transformation truly begins, not with claws or adamantium, but with identity erosion. The intake files from Weapon X reflect this chilling shift in perspective. Logan's life, his experiences, relationships, memories, was reduced to fragmented entries. Not stories, not defining moments, but data points, behavioral notes, biological observations, trauma markers, a lifetime compressed into clinical shorthand. Where a normal file might describe a person, these records dissected one. Each entry stripped away context and meaning, leaving only what the program deemed useful. Emotional attachments were flagged as weaknesses. Memory gaps were seen as opportunities. Even his instincts, his survival drive, his capacity for violence were categorized, measured, and ultimately exploited. In these early stages, something crucial was established. The man known as Logan was not being trained. He was being redefined. The Weapon X scientists were not interested in who he had been. They were interested in what he could become under controlled conditions. And so they began the slow, methodical process of turning a fractured man into a living instrument, one whose past would be buried beneath layers of manufactured identity and controlled aggression. This was not the birth of a hero. This was the clinical origin of a weapon.
Hey dark-themed comics fans! Are you ready to take your love for comics and pop culture to the next level? Introducing DTC Shop, your ultimate destination for custom-designed t-shirts and awesome digital comics. Whether you're into horror icons, anime legends, or the dark and gritty world of the boys, we've got something for every fan. Our high-quality, 100% cotton tees let you wear your fandom with pride, while our digital comics bring you epic stories you'll be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. So why wait? Head over to DTC Shop now and gear up with the coolest merch and some of the most underrated comics in the game. Because being a fan isn't just a hobby, it's a lifestyle.
Once the subject was secured, the methodology shifted. The initial phase, capture, restraint, containment, was never the end goal. It was merely the doorway. What followed was far more deliberate, far more invasive. The Weapon X program understood that breaking a man physically was temporary. To achieve true control, they needed to dismantle something deeper, his perception of reality itself. This is where isolation became the primary tool. Logan was not simply confined, he was removed. Sensory deprivation chambers stripped away external stimuli, eliminating light, sound, and any consistent environmental markers. Without those anchors, the brain begins to drift. Time becomes indistinct. Minutes blur into hours, hours into something unmeasurable. For a subject like Wolverine, whose instincts were grounded in survival and awareness, this was a calculated assault on his ability to orient himself within the world. Without time, there is no rhythm. Without rhythm, there is no stability. But deprivation alone was not enough. The program layered it with something far more insidious: constant low-level trauma. Not enough to kill, not enough to trigger immediate system failure, just enough to ensure the brain could never fully rest. Pain applied in controlled intervals, stress maintained at a steady baseline, interruption of any attempt at recovery. The result was a mind that could never reset. Under normal conditions, even the most resilient individual relies on cycles of rest and restoration, moments where the brain processes, organizes, and stabilizes itself. Weapon X denied Logan that entirely. His healing factor ensured his body remained functional, but his mind was trapped in a perpetual state of agitation. Every attempt at clarity was interrupted. Every moment of calm was sabotaged. This created a feedback loop. Disorientation fed anxiety. Anxiety fed instability. Instability made him more susceptible to control. And at the center of it all was identity. One of the most clinically precise steps in this process was the removal of Logan's name. A name carries history. It implies continuity, a connection between past, present, and future. To the scientists, that continuity was a liability, so it was erased. In its place came designation, a number, a classification, something impersonal, interchangeable, and entirely controlled by the system. Within the program, Logan was no longer an individual. He was an entry in a sequence, a subject within a dataset, a variable to be tested and refined. This was not just semantics, it was strategy. By stripping away his name, they severed one of the last remaining ties to his former self. Without it, memory becomes harder to anchor. Identity becomes easier to reshape. The subject begins to internalize the role assigned to him, not as a man with agency, but as a function within a larger design. In this environment, isolation was not merely physical confinement. It was architectural, a carefully constructed system designed to collapse the boundaries of self. Time was erased. Rest was denied. Identity was reduced to a number. And in that controlled void, the man who had once been Logan began to fade, replaced piece by something the program could finally control.